Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are getting very literal. We usually talk about peeling back layers of complex topics, but today we're stripping things back to the absolute center of you.
It's a structural center.
I'm talking about the chest, and specifically that centerpiece. When I first started reading for today, I'll be honest, I thought, okay, the breastbone. It's that hard, flat thing in my rib cage. It's there, it keeps my ribs attached, end of story.
Right. It's just a tie bar. That's the common assumption.
Exactly. But the source material, it paints this completely different picture. It describes the bone not just as a wall, but as a weapon, a shield and a sword.
It is a striking analogy, isn't it?
And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it.
And it's not just poetic. Anatomically, if you were to just isolate the sternum, it looks exactly like a short sword or maybe a Roman dagger hanging upside down.
A dagger in your own chest? Which is a little intense. But, okay, before we get to the sword part, let's talk about the shield, because that seems to be its main job.
Oh, absolutely. This one bone is the primary defender of the most valuable real estate in your entire body. We're talking the heart, the great vessels.
All the big plumbing.
All the plumbing that keeps you alive. And it's all huddled right behind this one flat bone.
So, just to orient everyone, if I press my hand right in the center of my chest, I'm feeling the sternum.
You're feeling the anterior surface. It's usually a bit rough, slightly convex, so it curves out a little.
And it's in the anterior median part of the chest wall, so dead center front side.
Precisely. And it's about 7 centimeters long on average. But here's a detail most people miss. It's not perfectly vertical. It's actually inclined slightly forward, kind of leaning into things.
Like it's bracing for impact.
You could say that. And this brings us right back to your dagger analogy.
Oh.
The sternum isn't just one solid piece. It's 3 distinct parts that fuse together.
And they correspond to the parts of a sword. I love this. It makes it so much easier to visualize.
It really does.
Okay, so looking at the diagrams, the top part, that's the handle.
That is the manubrium.
Then the long middle section is the blade.
The body, or mesosternum.
And then that little pointy bit at the bottom.
That's the xiphoid process, the point of the sword.
Handle, blade, point.
Well.
Okay, mission accepted. I want to walk through this thing from top to bottom because it seems like it anchors way more than just ribs.
It really is the keystone of the whole upper body. And if we start with that handle, the manubrium, we're talking about the thickest, strongest part of the entire bone.
Makes sense. The handle of a sword needs to be solid. It looks almost like a distorted square, quadrilateral.
It sits pretty high up opposite the 3rd and 4th thoracic vertebrae. And because it's the handle, it's dealing with a lot of pulling from muscles.
Right, I saw that list. It's not just the pecs, is it?
Oh, the pectoralis major is there for sure. But think about this. Just turn your head to the side.
Okay, turning now.
You feel that big ropey muscle that pops out in your neck, the sternocleidomastoid.
Yeah, I feel it.
That muscle anchors right onto the top of the manubrium. So every time you look left or right, you're physically tugging on the handle of that dagger in your chest.
No way. So my head movements are anchored to my chest bone.
They are. And it gets deeper. On the back side of that handle, you have the sternohyoid and sternothyroid muscles.
Those sound complicated.
Their job is pretty simple. They connect to your throat, basically, to the hyoid bone and thyroid cartilage. They help you swallow and produce sound.
Wait. So as I'm talking right now, I'm using muscles anchored to my sternum.
You are. This one bone is connecting your head, your arms, and your throat mechanics. It's a traffic circle for the upper body.
That is wild. Now, there's a spot on the handle I think everyone can feel. If you trace your finger up to the very top, at the base of your throat, there's that little dip.
Ah, yes. The suprasternal notch. Some call it the jugular notch.
It's a little U-shape cut out of the top.
It's thick and rounded, a key landmark for doctors.
Right.
And right next to it, on either side, you have the clavicular notches.
Which is where the collarbones attach.
Exactly. The clavicles snap in there to form the sternoclavicular joints. And get this, that joint is the only bony connection between your entire arm and your trunk.
Are you serious? My shoulder blade doesn't connect to my spine by bone.
Nope, just muscle. The only hard link, the only place that transfers force from your arm to your central skeleton is right there at the top of the sternum.
So if I push open a heavy door, that entire force goes down my arm, through my collarbone, and slams right into the manubrium.
Precisely. Now you see why it has to be the thickest and strongest part.
Okay, so the handle is the anchor, but we have to talk about what's behind it. The notes call the back of the manubrium a danger zone. That sounds ominous.
It should. It's one of the highest stakes areas in anatomy. If you could drill a hole straight through the lower half of the manubrium, you know what you'd hit.
Based on the diagrams, the aorta.
The arch of the aorta, the main pipeline coming off the heart, it arches directly behind that bone.
That is uncomfortably close.
Very close. And behind the upper half, you get the three major branches coming off that arch, the arteries feeding your head and arms, plus the big veins coming back.
So all the plumbing that keeps the lights on is just crammed right behind this one bony plate.
It's crowded, yes. And that proximity dictates a lot of medical rules we can get to. But first, let's move down from the handle to the blade.
Right. The manubrium meets the body. But looking at it from the side, it's not a straight line. The sword looks bent.
It is. It's bent at an angle of about 163 degrees. We call this the sternal angle, or the angle of Louis.
The angle of Louis? Fancy. Why the bend?
It's a functional hinge. This joint, the manubriosternal joint, is a type of cartilaginous joint. It's not fused solid.
It moves.
A little bit, yeah. When you take a deep breath in, that angle actually increases. It flattens out slightly.
To let the chest expand.
Exactly. And when you exhale, it decreases. The sword flexes every time you breathe.
That's incredible. Okay, so past the hinge to the blade itself,
Right.
the body, the mesosternum.
This is the longest part. Longer, narrower, thinner than the handle.
I noticed in the description it says the front surface has 3 faint ridges across it.
Those are fascinating. They're like geological strata. They're
Yeah.
evidence that the body started as 4 separate segments called sternebrae that fused together. Those are the weld lines.
Weld lines. I like that. So the handle protects the aorta. What's the blade shielding?
Here's where it gets really specific. Left side versus right side.
Because the heart's not perfectly centered.
Exactly. On the right side, the back of the sternum is just up against the pleura, the sac around the lung. Simple enough. Bone, pleura, lung.
But the left side?
The left side is different. The upper half, yeah, it's still covering lung, but the lower half on the left side, that is directly against the pericardium.
The heart sac.
And we call it the bare area of the pericardium.
Bare areas sounds exposed.
It is. In that one spot, the lung tissue sort of pushes aside, and the heart is right up against the chest wall with no lung cushion in between.
Wow. So there's a little window on the left side of my chest where my heart is basically knocking against the back of my sternum.
That is exactly what's happening. A thin barrier between the outside world and your heart.
It really makes that shield concept feel more urgent. And finally, we get to the very tip, the xiphoid process.
Xiphoid. It's the smallest, lowest, and honestly the most chaotic part.
Chaotic. How so?
Well, everyone's manubrium looks pretty much the same, but xiphoids, they're all over the map. Some are pointy, some are blunt, some are bifid split into a fork, some even have holes in them.
The wild card of the chest.
It is, but it's functional. It anchors your six-pack muscles at the front, the rectus abdominis, and on the back, it anchors the diaphragm.
And the source mentioned the linea alba.
Yes, the very tip is the starting point for the linea alba, that white fibrous band running right down your midline. So the xiphoid connects the chest to the abdominal wall.
So we've got the anatomy. Now for the why does this matter part. Because the clinical deep dive in the source material gets pretty intense.
It does. This geography is quite literally a matter of life and death in a hospital.
Okay, sternal puncture. The notes say the manubrium is a preferred site for bone marrow aspiration. Why there instead of the hip or somewhere else?
It's all about access. The manubrium is subcutaneous, it's right under the skin, you don't have to dig through much tissue, and it's full of rich marrow, which is great for diagnosing blood diseases.
That's the danger zone.
Exactly. That's the huge caveat. The notes are very clear this is dangerous, especially in children.
Why children specifically?
Because in kids, the bone's outer shell is still very thin, a little too much pressure, and the needle can punch right through the back of the bone,
And right into the arch of the aorta.
leading to a fatal hemorrhage. It's a catastrophic error. It requires immense precision because you are millimeters from disaster.
Okay, that is terrifying. What about when they need to get to the heart on purpose?
Yeah.
Like cracking the chest.
The midsternotomy. It sounds brutal, but it's the standard for most heart surgeries. They use a special saw to split the sternum right down the middle.
And it just heals. You saw a bone in half.
It heals surprisingly well, yeah. They wire it back together, and since it has a good blood supply, it fuses back up. But the shield is definitely compromised for a while.
Speaking of compromised shields, trauma. The steering wheel injury.
A classic, unfortunately. In a car crash, the driver's chest hits the wheel and the sternum takes the force. Now, based on what we've talked about, where do you think it breaks?
I'm going to guess the weak spot. That hinge The angle of Louis.
Spot on. That junction is where it usually snaps. But the fracture itself isn't the main problem.
That's what's underneath.
Correct. The real danger is if the broken fragments are pushed inward.
They become shrapnel.
Essentially, yes. They can be driven into the aorta, the heart, or if it's lower down, the liver. The shield becomes a weapon against the very organs it's meant to protect.
That's a horrifying image. The source also lists some deformities. Funnel chest and pigeon chest.
Pectus excavatum and pectus carinatum. Funnel chest is just what it sounds like. The sternum is pushed inward, depressed.
Which can't leave much room for the heart.
It can compress it, yes. And pigeon chest is the opposite. The sternum projects forward like the keel of a boat. It just shows how development can really vary.
Which brings us to the origin story. Because the way this bone forms sounds like science fiction.
It's a complex process. It doesn't start as one piece. It doesn't even start as bone.
Right. The notes say 2 vertical cartilaginous plates.
Sternal plates. Imagine 2 vertical bars of cartilage in a fetus's chest. Over time, those 2 bars have to migrate to the middle and fuse.
Like a zipper closing up the chest.
That's a perfect analogy. They zip up from the bottom to form the sternum shape. Then, slowly, bone replaces the cartilage.
And this timeline is crazy long. The manubrium starts turning to bone in the 5th month of fetal life.
And the body segments ossify leading up to birth. But it's not done. The xiphoid, the point, doesn't even start turning to bone until a child is 3 years old.
So in a toddler, that tip is still soft cartilage.
Exactly. And the fusion takes decades. The body segments fuse by age 25. The xiphoid might not fuse to the body until you're 40.
And that hinge we talked about, the angle of Louis.
That usually never fuses. It's supposed to stay a joint for life to allow for breathing.
But what if that zipper gets stuck? What if the plates don't meet?
Then you have a problem. If it's a small gap, you get a sternal foramen, a hole in the bone, a literal chink in the armor.
And if it's a big gap?
A cleft sternum. The chest wall stays open, and this is linked to one of the most visually shocking conditions, ectopia cordis.
That's where the heart is, outside the body.
Yes. Because the sternum didn't close, the heart develops outside the chest cavity, beating on the surface. It's rare and tragic, but it drives the point home.
Wow. Without that process working perfectly, we're incredibly vulnerable.
It connects everything. The embryology explains the anatomy, and the anatomy explains the clinical risk.
So to wrap this all up, we started with a flat bone, a shield, but it's also a sword, a dagger, with a handle, a blade, and a point.
A dynamic dagger. It anchors your arms, lets you speak, and hinges so you can breathe.
And we've learned that while it's strong, it also has these critical weak spots, the danger zone and the bare area.
It's a perfect balance of protection and mobility.
So I want to leave you with one final thought. We talked about that bare area on the left side. Next time you're sitting quietly and you put your hand on your chest to feel your heartbeat, realize that in that one specific spot, there is almost nothing between your hand and your heart. No lung, no big muscle cushion, just this thin, flat, sword-shaped bone. Just the shield.
It really makes you appreciate the armor, doesn't it?
It certainly does. That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.